The whole world saw it. Millions of people were staring at the same replay. Fans inside the stadium, fans at home, commentators in television studios, former players, journalists. Everyone reached the same conclusion within seconds. That is offside. The attacker looked clearly beyond the last defender before the sequence that led to a penalty, and then VAR ruled it onside. The penalty stood, the goal counted, and that was the moment FIFA's worst World Cup nightmare exploded in front of a global audience. Because the controversy was never really about the decision itself. The controversy was about something that never appeared. The line never came. If you watch football regularly, you know exactly what that means. Every disputed offside decision eventually arrives at the same destination. The replay freezes. Colored lines appear across the pitch. The technology does its work. The debate ends. Maybe you agree with the decision. Maybe you don't, but at least you can see the evidence. This time, the evidence never arrived, and that's where things started getting very strange. The incident happened during the World Cup match between Qatar and Switzerland at Levi's Stadium in the San Francisco Bay Area. The sequence seemed straightforward. Swiss midfielder Remo Freuler appeared to move beyond the final defender. The attack continued. Swiss forward Breel Embolo entered the box. Qatari goalkeeper Mahmoud Abu Nada brought him down. The referee pointed to the spot. Penalty. But almost nobody was talking about the foul. Everyone was talking about what happened seconds earlier. Because on replay, Freuler looked offside. Not close, not one of those microscopic decisions where a shoulder blade is ahead by 3 centimeters. He looked clearly offside, at least to the naked eye, and that is why millions of viewers waited for the one thing that could settle the argument instantly, the calibrated offside graphic. The line never came. 1 minute passed, then another. Broadcast moved on. The match continued. The graphic never appeared, and suddenly a routine VAR review had become something much bigger, because this wasn't happening on one network. It wasn't happening everywhere. American viewers didn't see the line. British viewers didn't see the line. Spanish broadcast didn't show the line. The standard piece of evidence used to explain the decision had seemingly vanished across the entire international broadcast system. And once people realized that, the reaction was immediate. Fans did what fans always do. They went online. Within minutes, social media was flooded with screenshots, clips, accusations, and theories. Many supporters called it the first major officiating scandal of the tournament. Others demanded the release of the offside image. Some simply asked a basic question. If the technology proved the decision was correct, why wasn't anybody showing it? The conversation spread fast. But then something happened that made the situation even worse for FIFA. The criticism stopped coming only from supporters. It started coming from people inside football itself. Former players and television analysts began openly questioning what viewers were seeing, or more accurately, what viewers were not seeing. Gary Neville was among the most vocal. During live coverage, he pointed directly at the missing evidence. His criticism wasn't focused on the offside call alone. It was focused on transparency. His argument was simple. FIFA controlled the host broadcast feed. FIFA controlled the technology. FIFA controlled the images reaching viewers. And yet, the one image everyone wanted to see was missing. That raised obvious questions. Questions that became even louder when Ian Wright joined the criticism and described the situation as a scandal. Now the story had crossed an important line. This was no longer just angry fans reacting emotionally to a controversial decision. This was respected football figures publicly challenging the tournament's information flow, and FIFA suddenly had a problem, not because people thought a mistake had been made, but because people no longer trusted the process that was supposed to prove whether a mistake had been made. There is a huge difference between those two things. A controversial decision can be survived. A crisis of trust is much harder to fix. 3 hours later, FIFA responded. On the surface, the explanation seemed simple. The organization stated that a temporary technical issue had prevented the animation system from generating the offside graphic for broadcast. According to FIFA, the visual failed. The technology itself did not. VAR had access to the necessary information. Officials made the correct decision. Everything worked exactly as intended, except for the part the public was supposed to see. Later, FIFA released 2 static images intended to support the ruling. Case closed. At least that was the expectation. Instead, the explanation created an entirely entirely new controversy, because when people looked closely at the statement, they noticed something uncomfortable. FIFA was effectively asking the public to accept a very specific scenario. The proof existed, the proof confirmed the decision, the proof could not be shown at the critical moment, but everyone should trust the proof anyway. Read that again. The evidence viewers needed to verify the decision disappeared exactly when verification mattered most. Then hours later, the same institution responsible for the decision assured everyone that the unseen evidence supported them, even if that explanation was completely true. It sounded terrible. And perception matters, especially for an organization already facing intense scrutiny, because here's where the story becomes a genuine nightmare. The missing line did not happen in isolation. It happened during a week when FIFA's credibility was already under attack from multiple directions at once. Brick after brick, problem after problem, controversy after controversy, all building the same wall. Critics had already been questioning ticket pricing structures that many believed pushed traditional supporters further away from the tournament experience. Questions were emerging about attendance figures. Viewers noticed visible empty seats during broadcasts, yet official numbers suggested near-capacity crowds. Explanations followed, but skepticism remained. Then came travel restrictions affecting supporters from dozens of nations. Then stories involving border complications. Then reports involving athletic personnel facing difficult entry situations. Then perhaps the most bizarre headline of all. A referee selected for the tournament reportedly found himself unable to participate after being denied entry and deported before officiating a single match. Individually, each controversy generated debate. Collectively, they generated something far more dangerous, a trust deficit. And once an institution develops a trust deficit, every future explanation becomes harder to believe. That's the real issue here. The line never came. But under normal circumstances, maybe that wouldn't have triggered such an explosion. Imagine this exact incident happening during a tournament operating with a full reservoir of public confidence. People might have accepted the technical glitch explanation. They might have shrugged and moved on. Instead, the reaction was completely different, because viewers were no longer evaluating one isolated event. They were evaluating a pattern they believed they had been watching unfold for days. And that's why this situation became so damaging. Football fans can forgive mistakes. They've been forgiving mistakes for generations. Referees are human. Technology fails. Systems break. People understand that. What they struggle to forgive is the feeling that information is being controlled, the feeling that visibility is disappearing, the feeling that transparency only arrives after the outcome can no longer be changed. That is where suspicion grows, and once suspicion enters the conversation, every delayed explanation becomes evidence for one side and damage control for the other. The debate stops being about football. It becomes a debate about credibility. Of course, there is an important counter-argument, and it deserves to be taken seriously. The decision may have been completely correct. The offside review may have been flawless. The technical issue may genuinely have been nothing more than terrible timing. That possibility absolutely exists. In fact, it could very well be the truth. But oddly enough, that is exactly what makes this entire situation so devastating. Because if FIFA is telling the truth, then this wasn't merely a technology failure. It was a credibility failure. An organization spent years building systems designed to eliminate doubt. Then, at the exact moment doubt appeared, the visible proof vanished. Not forever, just long enough. Long enough for trust to collapse. Long enough for theories to spread. Long enough for millions of people to start asking questions that still haven't completely gone away. And that's the tragedy hidden underneath this entire story. Qatar achieved something historic, its first World Cup point, a moment that should have dominated headlines, a moment supporters should have celebrated. Instead, the football became secondary. The conversation became about missing evidence, missing transparency, missing trust. And that may be the most revealing part of all, because World Cups are supposed to showcase football, but when institutions lose credibility, every match becomes a referendum on the institution itself. Every decision becomes suspicious. Every explanation becomes contested. Every mistake becomes a scandal, whether it deserves to be or not. That is FIFA's nightmare. Not the penalty, not the offside debate, not even the missing graphic. The nightmare is reaching a point where millions of people see a statement, hear an explanation, and immediately assume there must be something more. Because once that happens, every future controversy becomes larger than the event that created it. And right now, that question still hangs over this tournament. Was it really just a technical glitch? Or was it something viewers were never supposed to question in the first place? Whatever side you fall on, one thing is undeniable. The line never came. And in the space left behind by that missing line, an entire crisis of trust rushed in. And for FIFA, that may be far more dangerous than any offside call could ever be.